Russia's recent moves in space have sent shockwaves through defense communities and governments around the globe. The Kremlin's growing interest in orbital weapons has sparked concerns among US military officials and international allies. Analysts have observed satellite maneuvers by Russia that hint at dual-use technology capable of disabling foreign spacecraft. In 2022, Russia tested an anti-satellite weapon that created thousands of dangerous debris fragments in low Earth orbit. That single test led to widespread condemnation due to the risk posed to astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Experts believe Russia's weapon was designed to disable strategic satellites used for navigation, communication, and surveillance. Such satellites are considered vital assets by the United States and are heavily guarded by national security agencies. Russia's recent military doctrine emphasizes space as a battlefield, signaling a shift in long-term geopolitical strategy. The US Space Force has described Russia as a pacing threat, implying an urgent need to counter its advances. American military officials believe Russia may already possess advanced jamming and cyber tools targeting satellite operations. Russia's development of co-orbital weapons, satellites that can approach and tamper with others, poses a significant strategic challenge. These satellites can disable targets through physical contact or by releasing kinetic projectiles with deadly precision. In 2023, US intelligence identified unusual Russian satellite behavior around classified American assets in geostationary orbit. Such actions indicate Moscow's increasing willingness to test boundaries and provoke without triggering outright conflict. NATO has issued statements warning of the escalating risks associated with Russia's unregulated space activities. The alliance has urged the United Nations to adopt stricter guidelines for space conduct to avoid catastrophic incidents. Russia, however, accuses the West of weaponizing space first, citing US missile defense satellites as provocative examples. These accusations have deepened diplomatic divides, stalling arms control discussions that once held global consensus. Russia's state media promotes its space capabilities as a sovereign right to defend against foreign technological dominance. This messaging appeals to national pride while masking potentially aggressive military intentions behind civilian space projects. Critics warn that disguising weapons as scientific missions makes tracking and accountability extremely difficult for global watchdogs. Space analysts have flagged satellites with robotic arms or propulsion units as possible candidates for dual-use applications. Such features allow them to manipulate, capture, or destroy other orbiting assets without explosive weapons. Russia's use of dual-use satellites complicates attribution, allowing for deniability in incidents involving damaged equipment. This strategy is part of a broader Russian military philosophy known as maskirovka, or strategic deception. Western defense strategists are re-evaluating satellite constellations to include more redundancy and resilience against interference. Private companies like SpaceX and Amazon are now pivotal in US defense planning due to their rapid satellite deployment capabilities. Musk's Starlink, for example, played a key role in maintaining Ukrainian communications during early Russian cyber attacks. The success of commercial satellite networks has pressured Russia to bolster its industry for both defense and influence. Roscosmos, Russia's space agency, announced partnerships with its defense ministry to increase surveillance and rapid launch capacity. These moves reflect a national strategy that sees space as essential to future warfare and geopolitical supremacy. As tensions grow, some experts fear space could become a Wild West, lacking enforceable laws or dispute resolution mechanisms. Russia's rejection of proposed no first placement agreements raises alarms about its true intentions in orbit. Meanwhile, US lawmakers are urging accelerated investment in space-based missile defense to counter future threats. The Pentagon is also considering satellite constellations in medium and high orbits to protect against kinetic attacks. Cybersecurity in orbit has become a key issue as satellites can be hacked to disable or reroute essential services. Military analysts caution that a successful cyber attack on GPS satellites could cripple transportation and financial systems globally. Russia has reportedly invested in electronic warfare capabilities that can jam or spoof navigation signals over wide regions. These tactics have been used in conflict zones like Syria and Ukraine, providing real-world data for future space applications. The US and allies are now conducting joint simulations of satellite warfare scenarios to develop effective countermeasures. China's close cooperation with Russia in space raises additional concerns about coordinated strategies against Western infrastructure. Both nations have signed memoranda on lunar exploration and deep space coordination that extend into security domains. Intelligence experts worry these alliances could lead to a fragmented, militarized space environment with competing rules. International watchdogs, including the Secure World Foundation, advocate for transparency and communication to avoid misunderstandings. Despite these calls, Russia continues to reject transparency measures that might expose the extent of its military assets in orbit. The militarization of space could escalate rapidly if one side perceives an attack or acts preemptively out of suspicion. To deter this, US officials stress the importance of visible space patrols and rapid response satellite systems. Russia's own cosmonaut corps remains mostly silent on the issue, with space militarization driven by political and defense agencies. Public space launches still emphasize science and national achievement, masking parallel activities happening in classified missions. Experts believe some recent Russian launches have included military payloads under the guise of Earth observation satellites. Orbital crowding further complicates tracking efforts, as thousands of satellites increase the difficulty of monitoring specific threats. US Space Command has increased its use of AI to analyze satellite patterns and detect anomalous movements. Machine learning models are being trained to distinguish between benign proximity and hostile maneuvers in real-time scenarios. Russia's ability to disrupt satellites without causing visible damage gives it a covert edge in space-based conflicts. That invisibility makes it harder to build international consensus or prove responsibility after a suspected attack. The Biden administration has called for international coalitions to address these emerging threats with unified strategies. So far, few concrete steps have been agreed upon, leaving many to worry about unregulated competition in Earth's orbit. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 prohibits weapons of mass destruction, but leaves loopholes for other types of weapon systems. Russia interprets this treaty to support defensive systems that others perceive as offensive tools. Legal scholars are debating whether spacefaring nations need a new treaty framework to address 21st century capabilities. Moscow insists its actions are legal under international norms, though its definitions differ sharply from Western interpretations. With space critical to both military and economic futures, no major power wants to be left behind in this domain. Russia's recent budget allocations show increased spending on space surveillance and response systems for orbital threats. Defense satellites capable of evasive maneuvers and electronic shielding are being prioritized in upcoming launches. Independent analysts track these developments using open-source data and radar signatures to estimate military intent. Publicly available satellite maps sometimes show Russian equipment loitering near US or European commercial satellites. Such proximity can be interpreted as a signal, an unspoken threat in the new language of orbital power. Even symbolic gestures, like painting military insignias on spacecraft, send messages of dominance and capability. These subtle moves can escalate tensions when viewed through the lens of strategic deterrence and space parity. The international community remains divided on how to interpret these gestures, aggression or defense posturing. Some experts argue that until space has enforceable rules, it will remain a theater of calculated ambiguity and silent threats. Russia's ambitions in space are part of a broader global trend where technology outpaces diplomacy and legal governance. The challenge now is creating global agreements that can adapt quickly to innovation without stifling peaceful exploration. US policymakers continue pushing for updated treaties reflecting modern space hardware's dual-use nature. Many fear that even a minor incident could ignite broader conflict fueled by mistrust and misinterpretation without these safeguards. Russia's space program, once a symbol of cooperation, now represents a growing wedge in East-West geopolitical relations. The next few years could determine whether space becomes a shared frontier or another domain for dangerous competition. Observers stress that education and open communication are essential to counter misinformation and build trust among space powers. As technology advances, transparency and restraint will be vital in preventing the worst-case scenarios from becoming reality. Whether Russia's actions are defensive, opportunistic, or aggressively strategic, the risks of escalation are real and rising. The stakes are high, not just for nations, but for the entire world that increasingly depends on satellites for daily life. Ultimately, the future of space security may hinge on how quickly governments act before tensions spiral beyond control.